When I started this series, the first piece that I did was the gesture of the neck and the smile. And it's an archaic smile. If you look at that gesture number 1 in Digging Up Women's History, she's got a fixed smile, and the sculpture stops right here. That's where the stone stopped. When I was looking in this piece of stone, I had her sitting in my garage had the piece sitting in my garage for a long time. And all I could see was like the point of a chin and a neck. And I kept thinking, well, that's weird. But I went ahead and carved the piece as I saw what was coming out. And it took me a while. I had done actually 3 pieces of stone before I realized that these pieces were about the fragments of women's lives, how we are so fragmented that we're often just recognized for a pretty smile. And I knew that we're more than a pretty smile. It's more important for women to recognize themselves, to pay attention to who they are, than to have someone, a man or a parent or a teacher or someone outside themselves recognize who they are. We really have to claim our courage and claim our brilliance and recognize our creativity. Often we give that power away to somebody else because we're supposed to be seen and not heard. I have a quote that I cut out last year and put on my mirror because it really struck a chord with me. And it was originally credited, when I found it, to Nelson Mandela in a speech that he gave in his 1994 inaugural speech. He said, or he quoted, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be so brilliant, so gorgeous, so talented, and so fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be?" And this really said something to me. It said, find your voice. Take credit for what you have to say. Be a model for other women to take credit for their own courage and their own brilliance. The fascinating thing about this was that I read it and put it on my mirror, and it was a quote by Nelson Mandela. The original quote came from a woman, and she said Nelson Mandela has been given credit for this because he gave it in his inaugural address, and now he's being given credit for the statement. It's an age-old story of how many women have come up with an idea, who have made a statement, who have created something, and history has written it and given it credit to some man. So part of this Digging Up Women's History is about how we are really digging up our history. In the last 10 or 15 years, we as women have been able to say we are responsible for these advancements in society. We've been bringing our history into the light. The closet piece in the exhibit is about how women's history is often found in scrapbooks in the back dark reaches of the closet. And we now are able to bring our history out and say, this is what Nevada women are responsible for. This is what we've done. We've been a part of the making of this great state. And in a broader sense, we as women have been responsible for the making of this wonderful world. We've been powerful and positive influences in history. One of the things I found when I was carving stone for the first time when I was 37 was that I felt like I was coming home to stone. But I had actually been carving other objects all my life. When I was a young housewife, I would get bars of ivory soap, and I would carve these little bars of ivory soap with my children as models. It's as if this creativity wells out of us. We can't not do it. It has to find its form. And if, a piece of ivory soap is the only thing that we can find to carve, then that's what we do. carving these early pieces of ivory soap was a way of expressing what I was thinking about. I was trying, I mean, you know, I've always been wanting to do things with my hands. That always seemed to be really important. In the early 60s, when I was first married, I bought a gallon jug of resin. In those days, people made plastic grapes to put on their coffee tables. So I bought a gallon jug because I was going to make plastic grapes too, right? Well, I moved it from Claude, Texas, the gallon jug of resin and the little bottle of catalyst, to Silverton, Texas. And from Silverton, Texas, I moved it to Elko in 1967, still packing it along, thinking I'm going to get around to doing something with that someday. And then in 71, I moved it once again to Oak Street, from Juniper Street to Oak Street. Still hadn't done anything with it, but I knew I was going to. When I got the time, I was going to do that. Well, finally, in the 80s, I had the time to start sorting through the things in my garage, sort of like an archaeologist digging up my history. And what I dug up in the back reaches of my garage was this gallon jug of resin. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll do something with it now. But I found that even without the catalyst, it had solidified. So I carefully cut the plastic jug off of the solid piece of resin, and I called it procrastination. And I thought, this is a beautiful piece of work. Here it is. Just a few months ago, I was cleaning my refrigerator or looking something in my refrigerator, and I found that 2 cans of pizza dough had petrified in the back of my refrigerator. And when I read the expiration date, it was 2 years old. I mean, that's kind of embarrassing. But I brought it out and I thought, now this is art. This is really art. And I had friends over for dinner and she says, well, it's pop art. And I thought, yes, it is. It's pop art. So, you know, my work is about sometimes very serious themes and other times really kind of fun. You know, we are that way. We're full of fun and we're full of seriousness and we're full of fears and we're full of pain and anguish. And if you look at this exhibit, you'll see that I've been courageous about putting my fear and pain out there. The piece about my mother, photo finish. If you read the poem that I wrote after she died, and you look at the drawing of her in the hospital, and you see how this piece of work was really inspired. It was a commission for someone else who had invented AccuTrack photo finish system, but it became a piece about my mother's process in the hospital, and my family watching me create this piece and saying it's about the race between life and death. It's not who wins, but it's how you run the race. It became a touchstone for us, so we could talk about it. The monument to my feet, or it's called The Agony of Defeat, is really about how vain we are as women. I mean, I was so vain. I had to buy purple shoes with pointed toes, and I mean, I had to be very stylish. And all those years I was wearing these pointed-toed shoes, I was really reshaping my feet in a way they shouldn't have been. And in the field notes to Digging Up Women's History, it talks about women throughout the ages have been, or through many cultures, have been involved in binding their feet and reshaping their feet. And that it's been in the last few years, as we have claimed responsibility for our physical beings, that we don't have to shape our feet that way anymore. We don't have to be, and it took bunion surgery and a lot of pain to figure out that I had been going by style and fashion and not by what my feet should have been telling me. So I had a lot of fun doing that piece. And it was fun, too, to put the x-rays up there. For years, I hid my feet behind the chair because I had polio when I was a kid, so I had 2 very different sizes of feet. And I think a part of what being an artist is about being able to talk about those painful things and say, let's look at it in a different way. This really can be fun. So that monument has these two very different sizes of shoes, and it has these x-rays of two very different sizes of feet. Maybe it's been 20 years ago, I realized that I never would have been where I am as an artist if I hadn't have had polio, because when I had polio, I was sent away to a hospital where they didn't allow your parents. So for months at a time, from 6 years on, I would be at a hospital in Dallas, Texas. What I had on Tuesdays and Thursdays were occupational therapy, and that's where I learned to weave. I was 6 years old when I learned to weave in occupational therapy. And I learned to collage things when I was 9 years old. And a part of that experience was learning to develop skills for my artistic self. Never would have had that in Texas. I never would have had that in Sweetwater, because my family and my society didn't pay attention to art. I didn't even have art in high school. It was not a part of my experience to be building these skills. And yet, on the other hand, you have to build these skills because they just, they become pieces of ivory soap in your hand that you're carving. They become pizza dough in the back of the refrigerator, solidifying. The piece Maya was a major breakthrough for me. A lot of the pieces that I've done have been expressions that I was developing my talent through. I was learning to do things. When I did Maya, I was in Italy studying, and I knew that I wanted to make the gesture of a woman, and I knew that I wanted her to have her head up, because as I traveled across Italy, actually as I traveled all across Europe, I found that the women were in poses of submission. They had their heads down, they had their eyes kind of halfway cast open. And I kept wanting to walk up to these sculptures and lift their chin up just a little bit. So by the time I got to Italy and got my Italian marble from Carrara and started my experience of carving marble there in Italy, I knew that I wanted her to have her head up and her eyes open. My teacher, the master carver that was in the studio where I was working, kept coming over to me, and through an interpreter, he didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian, he would say, "Tell Sarah that she should have her head bowed in submission and her eyes kind of halfway open." And I wouldn't let him touch my sculpture, but he would draw on it with a pencil. And I would say, "No, Pasquale, she's got to have her head up and her eyes wide open." And he would say, "No, a classical piece like this needs to have this certain look." And the more I worked on her and the more he said that to me, the more I realized what it was I was trying to say. I was saying that a woman is willing to stick her neck out. For one thing, she's got her head up and she's able to look straight at you. She's able to claim her courage. And the second piece then that I did in that series was the Sea Goddess, which took me a while to finish. A lot of my pieces, maybe the reason I like stone and bronze is because it is such a difficult medium. It takes me a long time to work on it, but in that long process of working on it, I'm digging up what I'm all about. I'm learning about what I'm doing. It's not that it's completely formed and then I do it. It's in the process of making the piece, I understand what I'm doing. Like the piece of More Than a Pretty Smile, and also the second in that series, The Gesture of the Buttocks. And all I could see in that was there was kind of the point of a chin and there looked like the gesture of a neck. And so I started bringing that out. And I said, don't ask yourself why, just do it. And I carved that piece. It disturbs a lot of people because it is a fragment. I don't understand it, they say. Why didn't you go ahead and finish the piece? And maybe that's symbolic of how we are fragments as women. We are still in the process of finishing who we are as this whole, total, complete being. It's nearly mysterious to me sometimes. In Maya, when I carved Maya, I had originally drawn the sketch for her as a woman with equally, both sides of her hair were the same. And as I got into her with the air hammer, I ran into a large red iron stain. It looked like a brain tumor. It's just gross because there was this big red iron stain in the marble. Pasquale told me, he says, throw it away and start with a new piece. But I had so much invested in her. It was like I would have aborted something that was too wonderful. She was already alive to me by that time. So I went into the studio early that morning, and I decided I was going to carve until I got to the bottom of that iron stain. And I carved and carved and carved until I got to the other side of the iron stain. And then I stepped back and looked at her. And it was so wonderful because what had happened was she had birthed herself. She no longer had the iron stain. She no longer had any hair on this side of her head. But what she had was this big chunk of marble over here, and I could see the windswept hairdo that was going to take place. And it also exaggerated that long line of her neck. It exaggerated that strength, and so the marble actually said to me what was in there. It's really true what Michelangelo said about you take away what's not the piece of work. You just carve away everything that's not the figure. And what I was doing, Maya was dictating to me to carve away everything that wasn't her. She was really birthing herself. And in the process, I was birthing a little bit more of myself. I was digging up a little bit more about who I was, and I was willing to hold my head up a little higher and become a little stronger about what I had to say. I think it was really frustrating to my teacher Pasquale, because I kept defying what he was saying to me, you know, and maybe in that process we had a lot of fun about it, but in that process I was also learning how to be stronger with my voice and not give in to what was going to be dictated to me about this man, this master. You know, I was saying, that's fine, that's great for you, but it's not for me. It's not what I'm all about. A part of growing up in Texas was about being very female in a different kind of way than women are female today. It was about being seen and not heard. It was about paying attention to how you looked and not what you had to say so much. It's made it difficult to process or to come to terms with how I can be as a woman in this age now. That I can say what I think. I can hold my head up and know that it's equally as important to say what I have to say as to give credit to some man, some male. And that's not to say that men are not important in my life, because there's one whole wall that's about the romantic in me. I mean, a part of the process of being a woman is being very romantic and soft and tender and loving. And sometimes that involves hurt. If you look at those pieces that are on this one wall, Cupid turned his back on me. That's exactly a direct expression of what happened in a relationship to me at the time. Hiding the hurt is about, it's the piece that I did just after my divorce. It was about hiding my hurt. A part of the fun pieces that I've done have been about the wonderful men in my life, how much they've taught me. It was so great, because when I was working on this exhibit, I was realizing how many different components or how many different people had taught me how to be a woman. First of all, my children probably taught me more about being a woman. My 3 daughters have taught me more about how it is to be a woman, and have given me also the courage and the support to be who I am, and not to shrink away from it, or not to apologize about being different in some ways or being unusual in some ways. They've really taught me a lot about that. the men in my life have really taught me a lot about who it is as a woman that I am. And my students have really helped me give birth to myself. In teaching, I've recognized how important it is for us all to be examples for others. And so my students have really helped me celebrate who I am. My students have just been marvelous. My close friends have been really important too in saying, you know, it's great to be individual, it's great to be who you are. Growing up in Texas, it was not allowed or accepted to really be too individual. You didn't want to be too loud, you didn't want to sing too loud, laugh too loud, you know, do anything too loud. You wanted to be soft and quiet and smile and hide the hurt and not let anybody know how you were really feeling, you know. And so this exhibit's been a real release, and it's only the first in a series of what I want to do about women and who we are. The hands that are kneading the dough, that's the third gesture in the series, because I think we were recognized early on as being food preparers. The grain goddess was one of the great goddesses of early cultures, because she taught women how to plant, how to sow, how to reap the harvest, how to take that harvest and make bread and to nurture the rest of people, the rest of their community. And that was a good recognition. It was an easy one. It was a positive one. Some of the parts of ourselves that we're digging up now and putting out there are not always so easy. It's not always so easy to say, well, maybe being married and having children is not the only role that a woman can play. Maybe there are other roles that a woman can play. Or maybe she can play them all. Maybe she can do it all, and that's okay too. There are women who are really willing to do all of it, and they do it very well. Margaret Mead's been one of my idols, because as an archaeologist, anthropologist, she's really looked at cultures of people and brought these facts to us so we could understand more about those cultures of people. And I think this exhibit is about being an archaeologist. It's about digging up our history. It's about, you've got to know when to hold them. That piece is about, it's about the love in our life, the loves in our life. It's about the mother and child. It's about being a mother. It's about Maya and the sea goddess. It's about being strong and holding your head up. It's about the closet. It's about bringing those scrapbooks of our lives out of the back of the closet and putting it up on the wall and looking at it and having fun with it. It's about all those fragments of ourselves that we're digging up, and we're bringing them out like Margaret Mead did. We're bringing them out, we're writing about them, we're creating pieces about them to show who we are as a culture. We women are a culture of people, and it's not, the exhibit is sort of about Nevada women in the closet. The closet includes women that are from Northeastern Nevada. It includes images of our pioneers. But the exhibit as a whole is about all of those fragments that we're bringing up about ourselves, just as if we'd gone to a dig, an archaeological dig, and we brought up a fragment of a pottery. We brought up a pottery shard, and that fragment is only a part of a beautiful whole. And we look at those fragments when we go to museums. We look at those fragments, and we can imagine the total. And so this exhibit is about bringing out all those fragments, digging up all those fragments, and being able to see the whole vessel, being able to appreciate the whole culture, knowing that that vessel was only a portion of that culture, that society even. It was a vessel maybe for holding water. And so it's like the ripples in a pond, it just goes on and on to show who we are as women. I want people to go in and not just be touched by the pain that I experienced when I did the pieces about my mother, or not just find the strength in the pieces about the women and their strength, but to have some fun with it too, you know, to have a good time with it, because that's part of life too.